Los Angeles. Late afternoon. The examination room. This was supposed to be a routine medical evaluation. Nothing urgent. Nothing. The doctor flipped through the chart. Aste? Open your mouth, please. Michael paused. Just for a second. A hesitation so small most people were. The doctor leaned in. And instantly, everything sage. His expression shifted from neutral professionalism to sharp concern. He adjusted the light, leaned closer, and looked again, this time more carefully, more seriously. What he was seeing didn't match what he had expected. It didn't match what Michael had described. And it certainly didn't match what the outside world believed about the king of pop. This wasn't a simple dental issue. It wasn't cosmetic. And it wasn't recent. It was evidence of something deeper, something that had been developing quietly over time, hidden behind performances, rehearsals, and a carefully maintained public image. The doctor straightened up slowly, his mind racing. Years of experience told him this discovery was a warning sign. Not just of physical damage, but chronic stress, pain, and neglect that had gone unnoticed or ignored for far too long. Michael, the doctor said carefully, choosing his words, how long have you been dealing with this? Michael looked away. He didn't answer right away, because the truth was complicated and painful and tied to years of pressure, self-discipline, and silent endurance that few people could truly understand. What the doctor found inside Michael Jackson's mouth would soon shock everyone who learned about it. Not because it was graphic, but because of what it revealed about the cost of fame, perfection, and a life spent pushing the human body far beyond its limits. This was not just a medical discovery. It was a revelation. Stay with this story, because what happened next exposed a hidden struggle that Michael Jackson had carried alone for years. The appointment was scheduled as routine. That was how it appeared on paper. Just another medical evaluation added to a calendar already crowded with rehearsals, business meetings, and endless preparations. For Michael Jackson, medical appointments had become a normal part of life. His body had been working under extreme pressure for decades, and regular checkups were no longer optional. They were necessary. Still, nothing about this day felt routine. Michael arrived quietly at the private medical office in Los Angeles, dressed simply in a loose black jacket, dark trousers, and sunglasses that had eyes already strained with exhaustion. There were no fans outside, no photographers, no noise, just the soft click of doors and the muted voices of staff who had been instructed, once again, to treat him like any other patient. Inside, Michael moved slowly, not dramatically, just carefully. Every step was measured, as if his body required constant negotiation to function. His shoulders were tense, his posture guarded. Anyone watching closely would have noticed that he carried himself like someone who lived with pain daily, but had learned how to hide it. The doctor assigned to him that day was experienced, discreet, and accustomed to treating high-profile patients. He had reviewed Michael's file earlier that morning, pages filled with notes about chronic fatigue, stress-related symptoms, insomnia, and physical strain from years of performance. Nothing in the chart suggested urgency. Nothing suggested what was about to be discovered. Michael sat down in the examination chair and removed his sunglasses. The doctor met his eyes and immediately noticed something familiar yet troubling. Deep tiredness that sleep alone could not fix. "How have you been feeling?" the doctor asked. Michael smiled faintly. It was polite, automatic. "I'm managing." That answer, vague in practice, had followed Michael through countless appointments over the years. He rarely complained directly. He rarely described pain unless it became impossible to ignore. This wasn't denial, it was conditioning. He had been taught from childhood that discomfort was something to push through, not something to stop for. The doctor nodded and began the examination. Blood pressure, heart rate, basic neurological checks. Everything appeared within acceptable ranges, though nothing felt ideal. Michael's body was functioning, but just barely. Then came the part no one expected to matter. "All right," the doctor said gently. "I'm going to take a look inside your mouth. Please open wide." Michael hesitated. It wasn't obvious. A fraction of a second. A pause, so brief it could easily be mistaken for distraction. But the doctor noticed. After decades in medicine, he had learned that hesitation often spoke louder than words. Slowly, Michael opened his mouth. The doctor leaned forward, adjusting the overhead light. At first glance, he thought his eyes were deceiving him. He shifted position and looked again, this time more carefully. What he saw made his stomach tighten. There were signs of trauma, old and new, not the kind caused by a single accident, but damage consistent with long-term strain. Gum recession far beyond what was normal for someone his age. Inflammation that suggested chronic stress. Tiny fractures in dental structures that indicated grinding. Severe grinding over long periods of time. This wasn't cosmetic neglect. This was physical evidence of relentless pressure. The doctor straightened slightly, then leaned in again, confirming what he was seeing. The patterns were unmistakable. This kind of damage didn't appear overnight. It took years, sometimes decades. Michael, the doctor asked carefully, keeping his tone neutral, have you been experiencing jaw pain, headaches, tension in your face? Michael closed his mouth and looked down at his hands. Sometimes, he said quietly. The word was an understatement. The doctor felt a wave of concern rise in his chest. These symptoms pointed toward extreme bruxism, unconscious teeth grinding, often associated with severe anxiety, chronic stress, sleep deprivation, and emotional trauma. In many patients, it was linked to psychological pressure so intense that the body had no other outlet. What about at night? The doctor asked. Do you wake up with soreness? Michael nodded once. I don't sleep much, he admitted. That admission changed everything. The doctor pulled his chair closer and sat at eye level with Michael. This was no longer routine. This was a warning sign, a signal that Michael's body was breaking down in quiet, invisible ways. How long has this been happening? The doctor asked. Michael didn't answer immediately. His silence stretched across the room, heavy and revealing. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. I don't know, he said. A long time. The doctor exhaled slowly. He had treated athletes, executives, performers, but rarely had he seen physical evidence of internal pressure this severe. This wasn't just about rehearsals or exhaustion. This was about a life lived under constant expectation, where relaxation was impossible and rest felt unsafe. Michael, the doctor said gently, your body is under enormous strain. This kind of damage doesn't happen unless someone is carrying extreme stress for a very long time. Michael gave a small, sad smile. I've been carrying it my whole life, he said. That sentence lingered in the air. The doctor realized something profound in that moment. This was not a man who had recently become overwhelmed. This was someone who had never learned how to stop being overwhelmed. Someone whose nervous system had been locked in survival mode for decades. The mouth, something so ordinary, so often overlooked, had become the place where his pain finally revealed itself, not through words, not through confession, but through wear, damage, and silent endurance. The doctor knew that what he had just discovered could not be ignored. If left untreated, it would worsen, lead to infections, chronic pain, neurological complications, and more importantly, it signaled deeper issues that no medication alone could fix. This isn't just dental, the doctor said carefully. It's connected to stress, sleep, and emotional strain. We need to address all of it. Michael listened quietly. He had heard similar concerns before, but this time felt different. This time, the evidence was undeniable. What had been hidden for years, behind performances, smiles, and perfection, had finally surfaced. And this was only the beginning, because once the body speaks, it doesn't stop. The room felt different after the examination. What had started as a routine appointment had shifted into something heavier, more intimate. The doctor sat back in his chair, no longer thinking in terms of charts or checklists, but patterns of a body under siege for far too long. Michael remained quiet, his hands folded loosely in his lap. He stared at the floor, as if he already understood that what had been found inside his mouth was not just a medical issue, but a message his body had been trying to send for years. I need to ask you some more questions, the doctor said gently. Not just about pain, about your daily life. Michael nodded. The doctor began carefully. Tell me about your nights. When you go to bed, what happens? Michael exhaled slowly. I don't really sleep, he said. I lie down. I close my eyes. But my mind doesn't stop. That answer alone explained more than any scan ever could. The doctor leaned forward. How many hours would you say you sleep? Michael hesitated. 2. Sometimes 3. Sometimes none. The doctor felt a quiet alarm go off in his head. Chronic sleep deprivation at that level didn't just exhaust the body. It rewired it. It increased anxiety, weakened the immune system, intensified muscle tension, and forced the nervous system into a constant state of hypervigilance. And when you do sleep, the doctor asked, do you wake up tense, clenching your jaw? Yes, Michael said softly. My face hurts in the morning. My head feels tight. The doctor nodded. Severe bruxism often occurred during REM sleep, when the mind processed stress and trauma. In Michael's case, sleep wasn't rest. It was another battlefield. Do you have dreams? The doctor asked. Michael's jaw tightened slightly before he answered. Nightmares. That single word carried decades inside it. The doctor paused, choosing his next words carefully. Michael, the damage I saw inside your mouth suggests that your body is under constant stress, even when you're unconscious. Your muscles never fully relax. Your nervous system doesn't stand down. Michael looked up then, his eyes tired but attentive. I don't know how to turn it off, he said. That admission was not dramatic. It was factual, and it revealed something critical. Michael wasn't refusing rest. His body didn't know how to accept it. The doctor continued. Do you feel tense during the day? In your shoulders, neck, jaw? All the time, Michael replied. Even when I'm sitting still. That was the key. Stress that persists without an obvious trigger is often rooted in long-term trauma. The body learns to stay ready. Alert, defensive. It anticipates danger even in safe environments. Over time, that state becomes a default. The doctor glanced at Michael's chart again, then looked back at him. This kind of damage doesn't come from a few bad weeks. It comes from years of pressure, years of feeling like you can't relax, even when nothing is happening. Michael gave a small nod. There's always something happening, he said quietly. The doctor felt the weight of that statement. For Michael Jackson, stillness had never meant safety. Silence had never meant peace. From childhood onward, attention, even unwanted attention, had been constant. Performance wasn't something he did. It was something he lived inside. Michael, the doctor said carefully, your body is behaving like it's been under threat for a very long time. Michael's lips pressed together. That makes sense, he said after a moment. The doctor explained what the physical signs meant in clear, grounded terms. Chronic jaw clenching was often associated with anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress, and long-term emotional suppression. The mouth, used for expression, communication, performance, became a place where tension accumulated when words could not be spoken freely. In many patients, the doctor said, this kind of damage appears when someone feels they have to stay in control at all times, when they don't feel safe letting go. Michael listened intently. I was never allowed to let go, he said. Not really. That wasn't a complaint. It was a truth. The doctor felt a deep sense of concern, not just for Michael's physical health, but for the life he had lived inside his own body. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about rehearsals. It was about a nervous system that had never been allowed to rest. Have you ever been told to slow down? The doctor asked. Michael gave a faint, almost ironic smile. My whole life, he said, but slowing down never made things stop. The doctor understood. For someone whose identity had been built around constant output, stillness could feel dangerous. Silence could feel like exposure. That's the paradox, the doctor said gently. Your body needs rest, but rest feels unsafe, so it creates tension instead. Michael nodded again. The doctor took a breath. If this continues untreated, you could develop chronic facial pain, migraines, nerve damage, and serious dental complications. But more importantly, this is your body telling us something deeper is wrong. Michael's eyes flickered with emotion. I know, he said. I just don't know how to fix it. The doctor didn't rush to answer. Some truths couldn't be solved quickly. This isn't something you fix alone, he said. And it's not something medication alone can handle. You need rest. real rest, and support that addresses what your body has been carrying for decades. Michael sat quietly, absorbing the words. For the first time that day, he didn't minimize his pain. He didn't deflect. He didn't smile it away. He simply listened. The doctor realized then that what he had uncovered was not just a condition, but a confession the body had made on Michael's behalf. A confession of exhaustion, of unrelenting pressure, of a life lived without pause. And as the appointment came to a close, one thing was clear. What the doctor had found inside Michael Jackson's mouth was not the end of the story. It was a doorway into everything that had been held inside him for years. The next appointment was scheduled sooner than usual. That alone told Michael this was serious. When he returned to the clinic a few days later, the doctor was already waiting, files spread neatly across a desk. There was no rushed energy, no clinical detachment, only focus. The kind that suggested the conversation ahead would go deeper than teeth, muscles, or charts. Michael took his seat, sensing it. "I've been thinking a lot about your case," the doctor began. "Not just as a physician, but as someone trying to understand what your body is communicating." Michael nodded, his posture slightly guarded. "I reviewed your scans again," the doctor continued, "and I consulted with a neurologist and a sleep specialist. What we're seeing is consistent across disciplines." He paused. "This is not just bruxism. This is not just stress." Michael's hands tightened briefly, then relaxed. "What is it then?" he asked. The doctor chose his words carefully. "It's a prolonged trauma response." The room felt suddenly quieter. "For many people," the doctor explained, "trauma is something they remember. For others, it's something their body remembers, even when their mind has learned how to function around it." Michael looked down at his hands. "Your nervous system," the doctor continued, "is operating as if danger is always present. Your muscles are in a constant state of readiness. Your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, these areas are reacting as though you're bracing for impact." Michael swallowed. "That's why the damage is so severe," the doctor said. "Your body never stands down." Michael let out a slow breath. "I've always felt like that," he admitted. "Like I'm waiting for something to happen." The doctor nodded. "Exactly." He leaned forward. "Michael, I need to ask you something important. When did you first start feeling this way?" Michael didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "When I was very young." "How young?" the doctor asked gently. 5, Michael said. That single number carried a lifetime. The doctor didn't interrupt. He didn't push. He waited. "I learned very early," Michael continued, "that mistakes weren't allowed. That rest wasn't allowed. That being tired wasn't an excuse." His jaw tightened slightly as he spoke, a reflex he didn't even notice. "I had to be perfect," he said. "All the time." The doctor watched closely, not just listening to the words, but to Michael's body. Even now, decades later, his shoulders were rigid, his breathing shallow, his muscles tense, as if the memory itself was physically demanding. "That kind of pressure," the doctor said softly, "at that age, changes how the brain develops." Michael looked up. "When a child grows up without a sense of safety," the doctor explained, "the nervous system adapts. It becomes hyperalert. It learns that relaxation is risky, that vulnerability invites harm." Michael nodded slowly. "That explains why sleep is so hard for you," the doctor continued. "Sleep requires surrender. Your body doesn't trust surrender." Michael's eyes glistened, though he didn't cry. "I don't feel safe when I sleep," he admitted. "That's when the memories come back." The doctor felt a quiet heaviness settle in his chest. "Michael," he said, "your jaw damage is one of the few places where your body can physically release what it's holding. Clenching becomes a form of control. It's your body's way of saying, 'I'm still here, I'm still holding on.'" Michael closed his eyes briefly. "I didn't know it was that deep," he said. "Most people don't," the doctor replied, "because they've learned to function, to perform, to keep going." Michael gave a faint, sad smile. "That's what I'm good at." "Yes," the doctor said, "and that's part of the problem." He continued carefully. "Your life has required constant performance. constant vigilance, constant self-monitoring. There's never been a moment where you were allowed to simply exist without being evaluated. Michael's smile faded. Even when I'm alone, he said, I feel watched. That sentence landed hard. The doctor nodded slowly. That's internalized pressure. When external scrutiny never stops, the mind brings it inside. You become your own guard. Michael sat very still. And your body, the doctor said, has been guarding you for decades. There was a long silence. Then Michael asked, Is that why my pain never really goes away? Yes, the doctor answered honestly. Because the source isn't just physical. It's emotional memory stored in the body. Michael exhaled, the weight of understanding pressing down on him. So what happens if I don't change this? He asked. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. Your body will continue to break down. The pain will worsen. Your sleep will deteriorate further. And eventually, the nervous system will burn out. Michael's eyes flickered with fear. But the doctor added, This is not irreversible. Michael looked up again. Your body has survived incredible strain, the doctor said. That means it's strong. But strength without rest becomes damage. He paused. Healing won't come from pushing harder. It will come from learning how to feel safe enough to let go. Michael shook his head slightly. I don't know how to do that. That's okay, the doctor said gently. You don't have to know yet. He continued. But you do have to acknowledge that this isn't just about fixing symptoms. It's about addressing a lifetime of unprocessed stress. Michael sat back, absorbing it all. For the first time, the pain in his body made sense, not as weakness, but as communication. My body's been trying to tell me something, he said quietly. Yes, the doctor replied, and it's been very patient. Michael looked down, emotion finally breaking through. I've spent my whole life listening to everyone else, he said. I never learned how to listen to myself. The doctor let the silence hold that truth. This is where it starts, he said. Not with treatment plans or devices, but with awareness. Michael nodded slowly. He wasn't healed, but for the first time, he understood, and understanding, the doctor knew, was the first crack in a lifetime of tension. Michael didn't leave the clinic immediately. He sat in the car for nearly 30 minutes, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine off, staring straight ahead. The city moved around him, cars passing, people talking, life continuing. But inside, everything felt suspended. For the first time, his pain had a name. Not weakness, not failure, not just stress, trauma, and not something from the past, but something still living inside his body. That realization was more frightening than any diagnosis he had ever received. Michael had survived pain his entire life by doing one thing exceptionally well, pushing through it. He had learned as a child that stopping was dangerous. Rest invited punishment. Slowing down meant falling behind. And falling behind meant losing love, approval, safety. Pain, at least, was familiar. But what the doctor was asking, what healing would require, felt unfamiliar and terrifying. Letting go. Later that evening, Michael sat alone in his bedroom, lights dimmed, curtains drawn. He had canceled all calls. No assistance. No security updates. No schedules. Just silence. Silence, he was realizing, was not peaceful for him. In silence, his thoughts grew louder. He replayed the doctor's words again and again. Your body never stands down. Michael stood and walked slowly to the mirror. He studied his reflection, the thin face, the tired eyes, the jaw that still felt tight even now. How do I stop? He whispered to himself. He didn't mean the pain. He meant the vigilance, the constant readiness, the sense that something terrible was always about to happen. That night, sleep came in fragments. When he did drift off, the dreams returned, as they always did. He was small again, too small. His feet barely touched the floor. Music played too loudly. Someone was shouting. His chest felt tight. He couldn't breathe. He tried to move his mouth, but his jaw was locked, clenched so hard it hurt. He woke with sharp gasp, heart racing, jaw aching. Michael sat up, trembling. It was still dark outside. He pressed his palm against his chest, trying to calm his breathing. "You're safe," he told himself quietly. "You're safe now." But his body didn't believe him. The next morning, Michael returned to the clinic. This time, the appointment wasn't about scans or examinations. It was about options. The doctor greeted him with a nod, already sensing the heaviness Michael carried in with him. "I've been thinking," Michael said as he sat down, "about what you said, about my body holding on to things." "And," the doctor asked, "and I don't know how to live any other way," Michael admitted. "Being alert, being prepared, it's how I survived." The doctor leaned back slightly. "Yes, and it worked for a long time." Michael frowned. But now, the doctor said gently, "the survival strategies are hurting you more than they're protecting you." Michael was quiet. "There are paths forward," the doctor continued, "but they require something very difficult for someone like you." "What?" Michael asked, slowing down without feeling like you're failing. Michael let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "That feels impossible." "I know," the doctor said. "That's why it's frightening." He outlined the plan carefully, not as a command, but as an invitation. Trauma-informed therapy, not focused on performance or productivity, but safety, body-based work, breathing exercises, muscle release, techniques to teach the nervous system that it doesn't need to stay on high alert, sleep restructuring, not just medication, but routines that signal safety to the body, and perhaps most difficult of all, boundaries. Boundaries with what? Michael asked. "With everything," the doctor replied. "Your schedule, your environment, the constant demand to be on." Michael's jaw tightened again. "That's my life." "Yes," the doctor said softly, "and it's costing you your health." The words hit harder than Michael expected. "My whole identity is built on pushing," Michael said, "on giving more than I have, on showing up no matter what." The doctor nodded. "That identity was formed when you had no choice." Michael looked down. "You have a choice now," the doctor said, "even if it doesn't feel like it." Michael shook his head slowly. "If I stop, if I rest, I'm afraid everything will fall apart." "That fear," the doctor said, "is a trauma memory, not a prophecy." Michael absorbed that in silence. The doctor continued, "Healing doesn't mean becoming weak. It means allow yourself to be human." Human. The word felt strange to Michael, as if it applied to someone else. After the appointment, Michael walked outside into the sunlight. He stood there, feeling the warmth on his skin, just trying, to breathe without bracing. For a few seconds, it worked. His shoulders dropped slightly. His jaw softened. Then the tension crept back in. But he noticed it. That night, instead of forcing himself to work, Michael sat with his children longer than usual. He listened more than he spoke. He watched them laugh. He felt the ache in his chest. Not pain exactly, but something close to longing. This, he realized, was what safety was supposed to feel like. Later, alone again, Michael wrote something in a notebook. He didn't write lyrics. He didn't write plans. He wrote one sentence. "If I don't learn how to rest, my body will force me to." The truth of it scared him, but it also clarified something. For the first time, Michael understood that strength wasn't endurance without limits. Strength might be the courage to stop, to feel, to choose healing over habit. And that choice, far more than any pain, terrified him. Michael thought choosing healing would bring relief. Instead, it brought resistance. Not from his body, though that was still difficult, but from the world around him. The first signs appeared the very next morning. His phone began ringing before sunrise. Missed calls stacked up, messages from managers, assistants, producers. Each one carried the same tone, wrapped in different words. Urgency. "We need you." "This can't wait." Everyone's asking where you are. Michael sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, heart already accelerating. His jaw tightened automatically, the old reflex kicking in. For years, that reaction had been his cue to move, to comply, to perform, to show up no matter what it cost him. But now, the doctor's words echoed in his mind. "Your body never stands down. Michael closed his eyes and did something unfamiliar. He didn't answer. The silence that followed felt unnatural, almost dangerous. His breathing grew shallow. His chest tightened. If I don't respond, something bad will happen, his mind whispered. He recognized the thought immediately. Not logic, memory. Later that day, he met with his manager in person. The room felt tense the moment Michael walked in. "You missed rehearsals," his manager said without greeting. "We had people waiting." "I needed the day," Michael replied calmly, though his hands trembled slightly. "A day." The manager frowned. "Michael, this isn't the time to slow down. The pressure is already intense. You know how this works." Michael nodded. "I do." "Then you know disappearing makes people nervous." Michael looked up. "So does collapsing." The room fell quiet. His manager sighed. "You're under stress. Everyone is. That's part of it." Michael felt a familiar urge to apologize, to minimize, to retreat. But he didn't. "This is different," he said. "My body is breaking down." "We can manage that," the manager replied quickly. "Doctors, specialists." "No," Michael interrupted, surprising himself. "Not manage. Heal." The word hung in the air. His manager leaned back. "Healing takes time we don't have." Michael swallowed. "Then something else will take that time for me." That ended the meeting, but it didn't end the pressure. Over the next few days, the resistance grew louder. Schedules were sent anyway. Expectations didn't change. The machine kept moving whether Michael did or not. Each time he said no, or delayed, or asked for space, his nervous system reacted as if he were in danger. His heart raced. His palms sweated. His jaw locked so tightly it hurt. One evening, after refusing a late-night studio session, Michael found himself pacing his living room, unable to settle. His body vibrated with unease. "You're safe," he whispered aloud. His body disagreed. He tried the breathing exercise the doctor had shown him. Slow inhale, longer exhale. At first, it made things worse. The moment he slowed his breath, images surfaced. Flashes of childhood, rehearsals shouting, expectations. Michael doubled over slightly, gripping the back of a chair. This, he realized, was why it stayed busy for so long. Stillness opened doors he had spent a lifetime keeping shut. Later that night, he called his doctor. "I tried," Michael said quietly. "But when I stop, everything comes up." "That's expected," the doctor replied. "Your body is used to constant motion because motion kept you safe." "It doesn't feel safe now," Michael admitted. "No," the doctor said. "It feels unfamiliar." "There's a difference." Michael exhaled shakily. "Think of it this way," the doctor continued. "You're teaching your nervous system a new language. It won't trust it right away." The words helped slightly. The next challenge came from within. One afternoon, Michael sat at the piano, hands resting on the keys. Music had always been his refuge, his release. But now, even this felt loaded with expectation. He played a few soft notes, then stopped. His jaw clenched again. "This has to become something," the old voice said. "It has to matter." Michael stood abruptly, pushing the bench back. "No," he said aloud. "It doesn't." He sat again and played, not to create, not to perfect, not to impress, but simply to feel. The sound was uneven, raw, unpolished, and for the first time in a long while, that didn't bother him. Later, he shared dinner with his children. He laughed more. He listened. He noticed how his shoulders softened when he was fully present. This, too, was healing. But healing came with consequences. Rumors began circulating. That Michael was unstable. That he was difficult. That he was unreliable. Old fears resurfaced. "They'll leave. They'll replace you. You'll lose everything." Michael wrote those thoughts down, just as the doctor had suggested. Then he wrote a response beneath them. "I already lost myself once. I won't do it again." The act felt small, but powerful. At his next appointment, Michael admitted something that surprised even him. "I think part of me believed pain was proof I was working hard enough," he said. The doctor nodded. Many people with trauma believe rest is earned, not required. Michael considered that. What if I never learn how to exist without earning my right to exist? The question lingered between them. That, the doctor said gently, is the real wound. Healing, Michael was learning, wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant. It wasn't visible. It was quiet decisions made over and over again. Choosing rest when fear demanded motion. Choosing truth when habit demanded performance. It was saying no and sitting with the discomfort instead of running from it. It was noticing when his jaw tightened and asking why. One night, unable to sleep, Michael stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, people expected him to be invincible. He wasn't, and maybe that was the point. For the first time, Michael wasn't trying to outrun his pain. He was listening to it, and that, more than any diagnosis, was changing everything. The pressure did not ease. If anything, it intensified. By the time Michael woke up the next morning, his phone was already buzzing on the nightstand. Messages, missed calls, notifications layered over one another like noise he couldn't escape. He didn't look at them right away. Instead, he stayed still, listening to his own body. His chest felt tight, but not panicked. His jaw was tense, but not locked. His breathing was shallow, yet steady. This was new. Before, the sound of urgency alone would have sent his nervous system into full alarm. Now, the alarm was quieter, but it was still there, watching, waiting. Michael finally picked up a phone. The message at the top was short and unmistakable. We need a decision today. No warmth, no concern, just expectation. Michael sat up slowly, his feet touching the floor. He noticed how cold it felt. He noticed the weight of his body, the pull of gravity, grounding, the doctor had called it. Still here, still safe. He showered, dressed simply, and avoided mirrors more than usual, not out of vanity, but because he didn't want to read pressure into his own reflection. When he arrived at the meeting later that day, the room was already full. Executives, managers, advisors, faces that had known him for decades, but rarely knew how he felt. The conversation began before he even sat down. "We're behind," someone said. "People are nervous," another added. "This isn't like you," a third voice remarked, sharp and disappointed. Michael listened quietly. Old Michael would have jumped in immediately, explaining, apologizing, reassuring. He would have promised to push through, to fix it, to deliver no matter the cost. But that Michael was tired. When the room finally fell silent, all eyes turned to him. Michael folded his hands together. He noticed a slight tremor and let it be. "I need to say something," he began. The room leaned in. "I've spent my entire life pushing past my limits," Michael said calmly. "Physically, emotionally, mentally. And every time I did, people told me it was strength. No one interrupted. But what no one told me," he continued, "is that my body was keeping score." A few faces shifted uncomfortably. "I collapsed not because I'm weak," Michael said. "I collapsed because I ignored every warning sign I was trained to ignore." One executive sighed. "Michael, we understand you're under stress, but—" "No," Michael said softly. "You don't." That stopped him. "This isn't about stress," Michael continued. "This is about survival." Silence stretched across the table. "For the first time in my life," Michael said, voice steady but fragile underneath, "I'm listening to what my body is telling me instead of what everyone else expects." Another voice chimed in. "So what are you saying?" Michael inhaled slowly. "I'm saying I won't move forward at the cost of my health," he said. "Not anymore." The reaction was immediate. Concern turned into frustration. Frustration into calculation. What does that mean for the schedule? What does that mean for the contracts? What does that mean for the tour? Michael felt a familiar pull, the urge to make it all okay. Instead, he asked a different question. "What does it mean if I don't?" The room went quiet again. Michael stood. "I love what I do," he said, "but I can't keep sacrificing myself to prove my worth. If the only version of me you can accept is one that's breaking down, then that version ends here." Someone shook their head. "This could change everything." Michael nodded. "I know." He walked out before anyone could stop him. The drive home felt surreal. For years, moments like this had terrified him. Walking away, even temporarily, had always felt like failure. Now it felt like grief. Grief for the life he had lived. Grief for the child who never got to rest. Grief for the man who thought love had to be earned through endurance. When he got home, he sat alone in the living room, lights low. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The silence pressed in, bringing with it waves of doubt. What if you're wrong? What if this costs you everything? Michael placed a hand on his chest. His heart was still racing, but it wasn't spiraling. That mattered. Later that evening, his children joined him. They sat together on the couch, close without speaking much. Paris leaned her head against his shoulder. "You look tired," she said gently. Michael smiled. "I am. But different," she added. Michael kissed the top of her head. "I'm trying something new." "What?" Prince asked. "Listening," Michael replied. "To who?" Blanket asked. Michael paused. "To myself." That night, Michael slept longer than he had in months. The dreams still came, but they were quieter, less sharp, less demanding. In the days that followed, consequences arrived. Headlines questioned his reliability. Speculation ran wild. Some people distanced themselves. Others, unexpectedly, did not. Messages came in from people who had seen the signs but never had the courage to stop. I wish I'd listened sooner. I didn't know how to say no either. Michael read every one. Healing wasn't making him invincible. It was making him honest. At his next appointment, the doctor asked him a simple question. How does it feel to choose yourself? Michael thought carefully. Terrifying, he said, then smiled faintly. But real. The doctor nodded. That's usually how freedom feels at first. Michael understood now. The injury, the collapse, the discovery. None of it was random. His body hadn't betrayed him. It had protected him when no one else did. For the first time, Michael wasn't trying to be the strongest person in the room. He was trying to be whole. And that choice, quiet, misunderstood, and deeply personal, was the most courageous performance of his life.